She came to sing at a Mafia wedding, then saw her fiancé waiting at the altar. I am already 3 bars into the melody when I see him. The song is an old Sicilian ballad, a widow's lament, minor key, violin ache underneath, and I have sung it in dark rooms for years without feeling anything. It is a performance. That is all it has ever been. I close my eyes, I open my mouth, and the grief that pours out belongs to women long dead. It is safer that way. But tonight my eyes stay open. Maybe it is the ballroom itself, this obscene cathedral of wealth and menace, crystal chandeliers dripping candlelight over men who smile the way knives smile, women draped in diamonds that almost certainly compensate for something terrible. Maybe it is the armed guards posted at every arch, tuxedos barely concealing the shapes underneath. Whatever the reason, something keeps my gaze moving through the crowd, even as my voice holds steady on the second verse. And then I see the altar. I see the priest, old, bald, sweating under the gold-threaded vestments in a way that suggests he is here because he owes someone a very large favor. I see the white roses banking either side, extravagant, almost aggressive in their perfection. I see the aisle scattered with petals so dark red they look like wounds. And I see the man standing at the end of it. He is facing away from me, toward the doors the bride will come through. Broad shoulders draped in black that costs more than most people's rent. Dark hair, swept back, severe. The posture of someone who has never learned how to look small in a room. The guests around me shift and murmur in the low, cautious way people do when they are near something powerful and unpredictable. I know that posture. The recognition does not arrive like a memory. It arrives like a wound reopening. Sudden, total, breathtaking in how much it still hurts after 10 years. My voice does not break. I have too much control for that. But the note I am holding lengthens a fraction of a second past where it should end, trembling at its edge the way a bridge trembles when something too heavy crosses it. In the front row, a silver-haired Don turns to look at me, not because I faltered, because I was perfect in a way that cut through all the ambient noise of this room and made him pay attention. The man at the altar turns. Of course he does. He always had perfect hearing. Dante Belladonna's eyes find mine across 40 feet of wedding dress distance, through the shimmer of candlelight and the haze of expensive perfume, and the low murmur of 100 people who would kill for him without blinking. He finds my eyes the way lightning finds the highest point in the landscape, inevitably, unerringly, as if the laws of physics require it. He does not look surprised. He looks like a man who has been waiting a very long time for a bus that he always knew would come. That smile breaks over his face slowly. Proprietary, unhurried. The smile of someone holding all 4 aces and happy to let you figure it out at your own pace. My voice does break then. 1 syllable. Barely anything. The microphone catches it, that raw splinter of sound, and the room goes silent in the way that rooms go silent when something shifts that cannot be unshifted. I remember everything. I remember being 16 years old and sitting in my father's study while 2 men in expensive suits divided my future between them over brandy. I remember the blood oath. I remember the name signed beside mine in red ink on cream paper. Dante Belladonna, heir apparent, 19 years old, already feared. I remember the roses he left outside my window the morning after, dark red just like the ones at this altar, with no note, as if the roses were the note. I remember running, 10 years of running, 10 years of building a life out of my voice and my stubbornness and the absolute conviction that no one would ever own me the way that contract tried to. And now here I stand in the dress they provided. Crimson silk, of course, behind a veil of sheer curtains on a raised platform that might as well be a cage, holding a microphone that delivered me here like a leash dressed up as an opportunity. The envelope. $10,000. One night, no questions. Oh, Sarah, you fool. The wedding was never for some faceless bride. There was never going to be a bride. There is only me and the man at the altar, and 10 years between us that apparently mean nothing to a man who has decided he has been patient long enough. If your heart just dropped into your stomach, good. That means it's working. Subscribe so the next chapter finds you. Let me tell you what the Ravello name actually means. Not the version they print in the society columns, old money, shipping lanes, philanthropic foundations with tasteful logos. The real version. The version I grew up inside like a fish grows up inside a tank, never quite understanding that glass has two sides until the day you swim face first into it. My father, Cosimo Ravello, was not a violent man. He never had to be. He had a gift for making other people's violence available to him at favorable rates, and that is a rarer and more valuable talent than pulling a trigger. He brokered. He mediated. He smiled at fundraising dinners and shook the right hands and came home at night and moved his daughters around his ledger like line items. I was the musical one. My sister Fiamma was the beautiful one, which meant she was engaged by 15. I used to think I was lucky that my value was tied to something I controlled. My voice, my discipline, my hours of practice. I used to think that made me different. The blood oath changed that. The Belladonnas had been allies of the Ravellos for 2 generations, a relationship built on mutual benefit and the mutual capacity for destruction that keeps such relationships stable. When the alliance began to fray, my father needed a way to reseal it. He chose me, not Fiamma. Me. Because Dante Belladonna had heard me sing at one of my father's parties when I was 15, and apparently, this is the part that keeps me awake at night even now, apparently something in the way I sang made him ask my father directly, made him willing to put his family's signature on terms that favored the Ravellos, a 17-year-old girl's voice, weaponized as a dowry. I found out 2 weeks before my 16th birthday. My father called it an honor. My mother said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. I stood in that study with the contract in my hands, 8 pages of careful, formal language that reduced my entire future to a series of clauses, and I understood for the first time that the tank had walls. I ran 3 months later, not dramatically. No midnight escape in the rain, no dramatic confrontation. I simply did not come back one evening, packed one bag, took every dollar I had saved from performing at my father's parties, left my phone on my pillow, walked out the front door at 7 p.m. while the staff was occupied with dinner service, took a cab to Penn Station, and disappeared into a city large enough to get lost in. I built something real from nothing. Small clubs at first, the kind with sticky floors and an audience of 9 who paid $10 for a beer and got me as a bonus. Then slightly larger rooms, a residency at a bar in the West Village that paid enough to cover rent if I was careful. I changed my performance name. I built walls inside walls. Every time a man looked at me too long, I moved on. And the Belladonnas never came. That was the part I never understood. Dante was 19 and the heir to one of the most powerful crime families in New York. If he wanted me found, I would have been found in a week. I know enough about how these families operate to understand that. So why hadn't he? I told myself he didn't care, that the contract was business, not personal, that he'd replaced me in the ledger with someone more convenient and moved on. I told myself this for 10 years. I told myself this right up until the moment I received an envelope full of cash and a handwritten line that should have sent me running in the opposite direction instead of toward a ballroom that turns out to be the most elaborate trap I have ever walked into. The club owner I worked for had a debt. He mentioned casually that certain people had expressed interest in clearing it in exchange for a favor. I should have asked more questions. I know that now. But the number in that envelope was the exact amount my mother needed for the surgery she'd been waiting 2 years to afford. And when the universe presents you with the precise price of someone you love, the rational mind goes quiet. So here I am, in a crimson dress I did not choose, on a stage I did not want, in front of a room full of dangerous people watching me with the particular avid attention of an audience that already knows the twist. Everyone in this room knew except me. The fury at that realization is a warm, focused thing. It does not make me cry or shake. It makes me very, very still. Dante is still watching me from the altar. He has not moved. He has not spoken. He is simply waiting, the way he apparently has been waiting for a decade, with that particular quality of stillness that distinguishes patience from paralysis. I take one slow breath, and I keep singing. Because if Serafina Ravello is going to be anyone's prey tonight, she will be the most composed prey this room has ever seen. The ceremony does not proceed. Of course it doesn't. It was never designed to. It was designed to get me into this room, and now that I am here, it has done its job. The priest wipes sweat from his forehead. The guests remain seated with the well-trained stillness of people who understand that movement without permission is unwise. Dante steps down from the altar. The room exhales as one. He walks toward me with the kind of unhurried certainty that costs years to acquire. Every step placed with the precision of someone who has never needed to hurry because the world has always arranged itself to wait. The guest's part, not theatrically, simply. The way water parts around a stone that has always been there. I do not step back. I will not give him the satisfaction of watching me retreat, not in front of 100 people who will remember this moment for the rest of their lives. So I hold my position on the platform, microphone still in hand, and I watch him come. Up close, he is less of an abstraction. He is 32 now. I have done the math 1,000 times without admitting why, and time has not softened him the way it softens some men. It has consolidated him instead, stripped away anything that was ever uncertain or unfinished, left only the essential structure. Dark eyes that are simultaneously completely unreadable and impossible to look away from, a jaw that could cut glass, the faint shadow of a scar at his left temple that was not there 10 years ago. He stops 3 feet away, not crowding, not challenging, just present in the absolute unavoidable way of someone who has decided that this is exactly where he intends to be. "You almost held it," he says. His voice is low, unhurried. For a man who has orchestrated the most elaborate ambush of my adult life, he sounds almost conversational. The 4th bar. Most people wouldn't have heard it. Most people didn't know what they were listening for, I say. Something shifts in his expression. Not surprise. He hasn't looked surprised once tonight, but something adjacent to it. Appreciation, maybe. The particular quality of attention you give a thing that confirms your expectations and exceeds them simultaneously. No, he agrees. They didn't. I am acutely aware that 100 sets of eyes are fixed on this exchange. I am aware that every word we say in the next 2 minutes will be interpreted, discussed, and turned into currency. So I keep my voice low and steady and level. "I want to leave," I say. "I know." A pause. "You won't. You can't keep me here by force, not in front of—" "I'm not going to keep you here by force." He says it simply, as though force is an inefficient tool he stopped using years ago. "We need to talk privately. Give me 20 minutes. After that, if you still want to leave, your car will be waiting. The money you came for is already in your account. I deposited it this morning." That stops me. Not the money. The specificity of it. He deposited it this morning, before the ceremony, before I arrived. As if my departure from his world, at whatever point it comes, has always been worth compensating properly, as if he has always known the difference between caging something and earning its trust. 20 minutes, I say. His office is at the far end of the estate, past corridors lined with art that belongs in museums and probably shouldn't be discussed with Interpol. Heavy door. The kind of silence that only comes from very good soundproofing or very thick stone, probably both. He pours water. Not a power play, he asks first, and when I say yes, he pours 2 glasses and leaves mine on the desk between us without making me reach for it. "I've known where you were for 6 years, he says. The words land like a stone dropped into still water. I watched you build your career, the residency at the Morrow Club on Bleecker, the East Village apartment, the recording sessions you did with the Caruso label that never went anywhere because their A&R was incompetent." He says none of this with particular inflection, just facts, cataloged. "I didn't move because..." He stops, starts again differently. "You were building something. I wasn't willing to take that from you the way everything had been taken from you before." I absorb this. "Why now?" I ask. "Because your father sold your location to the Calderone family 8 months ago. They've been patient. They won't be much longer." He holds my gaze. "I brought you here before they could." The ground shifts under me in a way that has nothing to do with the marble floor. My father sold my location to the Calderones. I know what the Calderones do with women they acquire. Everyone who grew up in this world knows. "The offer," Dante says, "is this. You stay under Belladonna protection for as long as it takes to neutralize the Calderone threat. In exchange, the contract, the original blood oath, is voided permanently. My signature, my family's witnesses. You leave this as a free woman with no claim against you." He pauses. "And in 20 minutes, if you want to leave, the car is still waiting." I look at the man who engineered the most elaborate thing anyone has ever done in my general direction, and I try to figure out if he is lying. I cannot tell. That is the problem. "Why does it matter to you?" I ask quietly. "The contract is worthless if I'm dead or taken. You could have voided it without the theatrics." He is quiet for 3 long seconds. "Because I wanted you to come back to this room by choice, not by summons." Another pause. "I wanted you to see it first, to understand what you were choosing." Choosing. The word sits between us in the expensive silence of this office while 100 people wait outside, and my father's name curdles in my chest like something gone bad. "I'll stay," I say, "but I have conditions." And for the first time tonight, Dante Belladonna smiles like he means it. Do you think Dante brought her here to protect her or to claim her? Drop your read in the comments. My conditions are simple. My own room, a phone I can use without supervision, and the truth, all of it, whenever I ask for it. He agrees without negotiating, which should reassure me and instead makes me more suspicious, because men who give in too easily are usually certain they've already won. The room they give me is on the 3rd floor, east-facing, which means it catches the light early. Someone has put flowers on the dresser, white ones, nothing as on-the-nose as roses, and the kind of toiletries in the bathroom that suggest either genuine hospitality or a very well-briefed staff. The window locks from the inside. I notice that. Antonia Belladonna, Dante's younger sister, the one they call the wedding planner, but who is clearly something considerably more dangerous than that, comes to see me in the morning. She arrives at 7 with espresso and a face that is beautiful in the specific way of a person who has decided to weaponize it. "He didn't sleep," she says, which is not a greeting. She sets the espresso on the table between us, and sits without being invited. He was in the operations room until 4. He's not going to tell you that. So I am. Why? I ask. Because you're going to make assumptions about what you walked into, and I'd rather you make accurate ones. She crosses her legs. Her nails are painted the dark red of arterial blood. He's been running interference between you and the Calderonis for 8 months. Quietly. That's not nothing. I look at her. Why are you telling me this? Because my brother is many things, and one of them is incapable of asking for help with the things that actually matter to him. She picks up her own espresso. And because if you decide to run again, I'd rather you run knowing the full picture. She leaves before I can respond. I think that might be intentional. That afternoon, Enzo Ferrante, the underboss, shaved head, forearms like structural supports, escorts me to the estate's private garden for what is described as fresh air, and is clearly surveillance dressed up as courtesy. He doesn't pretend otherwise, which I appreciate. How long have you worked for him? I ask. 12 years. And before that, a pause. For his father, until his father made a decision Dante couldn't live with. I wait. His father was going to use the contract, Enzo says. The blood oath. After you ran, there was pressure to pursue the matter. Make an example. Dante refused. They went 3 rounds about it. Dante won, but it cost him. He pauses again. This is information I'm giving you because it is accurate, not because I like talking. Noted, I say. I think about that conversation for the rest of the afternoon. About a 19-year-old who inherited a contract for a girl who ran and chose to let her stay gone. About the cost of that choice, measured in currency I'll never fully understand. Late that evening, my phone rings. My mother. She's crying before I say hello. Not sad crying, the other kind, the relieved kind, the kind that sounds like the release of pressure that has been building for too long in a sealed place. The hospital called. The surgery is confirmed. The payment cleared 2 days ago. An anonymous transfer from an account she doesn't recognize. 2 days ago. Before the envelope. Before the ceremony. Before any of this. I sit with the phone against my ear and my mother's voice in it, and I think, he knew I would come. He knew I would see the exact amount and choose my mother over my safety. He arranged for the payment regardless, so that even if I had bolted at the door, she would still have what she needed. He protected my exit even as he engineered my arrival. I do not know what to do with that. It does not fit the architecture of the man I ran from, the abstraction I've been using as fuel for 10 years, the cold-eyed air with the proprietary smile. It fits something more complicated and more dangerous. Mom, I say carefully, is Papa there? A beat. No, he hasn't been here in weeks. After I hang up, I sit with the lights off for a long time. The anger about my father is a clean thing, at least. Pure. Requires nothing complicated from me. The thing I feel about Dante is considerably less clean. When I come downstairs at 10, the house is quiet except for voices from the operations room. I pause outside the half-open door. I shouldn't listen. I listen. The Calderone representative is asking for a meeting, someone says. I don't recognize the voice. Tell him no. Dante, flat. He's implying the matter of Ravello's debt is still... Tell him the debt is cleared. Through me. Tell him she's mine. A pause. Tell him if anyone from his family comes within 5 miles of this estate, I will personally remind him why they call this family Belladonna. He knows what the plant does. He should find a parallel instructive. Silence. Then the creak of a chair. I step back from the door before I am seen, my pulse loud in my ears. She's mine. The words settle into me with a complexity I'm not ready to examine. There is a version of those words that is a cage. There is another version that is the only thing standing between me and something considerably worse. Tonight, in this house, in this situation, I cannot tell the difference. But I notice, as I go back to my room, that the anger has gotten complicated. That is either very good or very bad. I haven't decided which.
3 days pass. He does not crowd me. That is the first thing I notice. There are men in this house who are incapable of being in the same room as a woman without making their presence felt like a demonstration. But Dante moves through the same spaces I do with a kind of deliberate neutrality. Present, available, never pressing. It would be easier if he pressed. I know how to push back against pressure. I have been doing it my entire adult life. What I don't know how to do is handle consideration. Consideration from this man specifically feels like a new kind of trap, and I keep waiting to identify the mechanism. On the 4th night, I find him in the library. He is reading. Actually reading, not performing reading, and he doesn't look up immediately when I come in. I take the chair across from him and sit with a glass of water and the specific tension of someone who has decided to do something and is still adjusting to the decision. "Tell me about my father," I say. He sets the book down. No hesitation. "What do you want to know?" "When? How much? What he got?" 7 months ago, the Calderones cleared $40,000 in gambling debt and offered access to a shipping lane through territory your father no longer controls. He gave them an address, a schedule, and a photograph. His voice is even. I found out because I have a source inside Calderone's accounting. The address was the club on Bleecker. The schedule was your Thursday residency. I absorb this quietly. He sold the Thursday schedule, I repeat. So they were going to take you on a night you were predictable and alone, and crossing a street you crossed every week. He holds my gaze. Yes. The cold that moves through me is very focused, very useful. I hold on to it. "Thank you for telling me," I say. "You asked." A silence settles between us, not uncomfortable. The kind of silence that requires two people to sustain. The kind that means something different from the absence of conversation. "You said you heard me sing," I say eventually. "When I was 15. Something shifts in his expression. "At your father's Christmas party. You were at the piano in the back room because the adults didn't want you underfoot. I came looking for the bathroom. You were singing to yourself, not performing, just singing because you wanted to." He pauses. "I stood in the doorway for 6 minutes before you noticed me." I remember. I do, I realize. A tall teenage boy in an expensive suit, watching with an expression I couldn't read, and now understand was the same one he's worn this entire week. "You left without saying anything." I was 19. I didn't have anything worth saying. I look at him for a long moment. "And the contract? That was already signed. I asked your father directly after that party, and he saw an opportunity. I didn't understand what I was asking him to do, what it would mean for you." A beat. "By the time I did understand, it was done." "But you wanted me to run." He doesn't deny it. "I wanted you to have the option. Wanting something and knowing it's not right to take it, those can coexist." The candles on the library table are burning low. Outside, the grounds are silent except for the distant sound of the Hudson moving in the dark. I am in the house of a man who could have had me delivered here in the back of a car at any point in the last 6 years, and instead fed information to my employer about a threat I didn't know existed and waited for me to walk in on my own terms. That is not love. I'm not going to call it love. Love does not come wrapped in 10-year silences and elaborate deceptions and rooms that happen to have the right flowers in them. But it is something. If I asked you something, I say slowly, would you answer honestly? If I can. Did you always plan to bring me back? Not to protect me, to have me back. Was the threat the pretext or the reason? He is quiet for a long time, long enough that I think he's not going to answer, or that the answer is no and he's deciding how to phrase it. Both, he says finally. The threat was real. What I felt was also real. I have never pretended to be someone who separates those things cleanly. That's an honest answer, I say. You asked for one. I set down my water glass. I stand. I am at the door when I stop. Dante, I don't turn around. The roses you left outside my window, the morning after the contract was signed. Why? A long pause. Because you were 16 and it was done, and I couldn't undo it. And I wanted you to know that whoever was on the other side of that piece of paper, whatever you'd heard, whatever you were afraid of, saw something worth bringing flowers to. His voice is quiet. It was inadequate. I know that. I stand in the doorway of this library for several seconds in the silence. Then I go upstairs. I do not sleep for a long time. Is there a difference between a man who lets you run and a man who lets you go? Tell me what you think in the comments. On the 6th day, someone tries to kill him at breakfast. Not dramatically, no screaming, no chase sequence. One of the kitchen staff, a man who has apparently worked here for 3 years and been quietly on Calderon's payroll for 2 of them, puts something in the espresso that would have shut down a heart within the hour if Enzo hadn't noticed a discoloration in the cup that he's apparently trained himself to recognize. The man is removed from the kitchen with a professionalism I choose not to examine too closely. Dante sits at the breakfast table while a doctor checks his vitals. He got a small amount before Enzo intervened, with the specific expression of a man who has been told the same bad news enough times that it no longer surprises him. I bring him water. It is an absurdly small gesture, and I know it. He looks at me over the glass. You didn't go upstairs. No. Most people would have. I'm not most people. I sit down across from him. How deep does this go? The breach. He considers whether to answer. Then, deeper than a kitchen. He sets the glass down. The Calderones have been buying access for months. Small purchases, patience. They're building towards something larger. What? He looks at me steadily. A public event. The commissioning ceremony for the new West Side Pier development. It's legitimate on paper, which is how 24 families are attending. If the Calderones move there, in public, they make a statement. When? 4 days. I process this. And you're going. I have to go. If I don't appear, I signal vulnerability. The families watching will read it as the Calderones winning before the fight is done. This is the world I grew up adjacent to and never fully inside. The one that runs on perception and reputation and the specific courage of showing up to a room that might kill you because the cost of not showing up is higher. My father never had it. He bought his safety with other people's. The men at this table have something different in them. I want to come, I say. Dante looks at me with an expression that is several things simultaneously. No. I'm already a target. Keeping me here doesn't make me safer. It just means I'm not where you can see me. I hold his gaze. And if the Calderones are watching the estate while you're at the pier, having me here without the full security presence is exactly what they'd want. A pause. Antonia, who is leaning against the doorframe with her third espresso of the morning, says without looking up, "She's not wrong." Dante looks at his sister, then back at me. "You stay close," he says finally. "You don't move without one of my people beside you. And if anything changes, you do exactly what you're told, without an argument." "Within reason," I say. "Non-negotiable." "Fine." The 4 days before the event are a study in controlled tension. Enzo briefs me on the families who will be there, their alliances, the lines I should not cross in conversation. I memorize names with the same discipline I use to memorize scores, methodically, efficiently, finding the internal logic that makes them stick. I learn which families are watching the Belladonnas and which are watching the Calderones, and which are watching both and keeping very careful notes. I learn that Dante's father, before he died 18 months ago, had been quietly undermining his own son's authority for 2 years, a slow erosion of loyalty and support that the old man ran through intermediaries he thought Dante didn't know about. I learn that Dante knew, that he let it happen and worked around it and never confronted his father directly. And when the old man died of a stroke, Dante arranged the funeral with a thoroughness that could read as grief or as professionalism, and is probably both. "He respected your father," Enzo tells me, in one of the evenings when he sits at the kitchen table long after the others have gone to bed, apparently because he has decided I am trustworthy enough for honesty. Even when the old man made it hard. Dante thinks loyalty means something, even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. I think about that. About loyalty that holds even when it's painful. About what that costs. About whether I have ever seen it practiced without an ulterior motive. On the evening before the pier ceremony, I find Dante on the east terrace. The Hudson is visible in the distance, dark and moving, city lights making constellations of themselves in the water. He has a glass of something amber, and he doesn't hear me come out. For a moment, I just watch him. He looks tired in the way that people look tired when they have been performing competence for too long in front of too many people. Not broken, not uncertain, just human. Just a person carrying something heavy in a building full of people who need him not to show it. I don't say anything. I sit down beside him on the terrace railing, not touching, just present. After a while, he says, "You don't have to do this." "I know," I say. "The offer stands. The car, whenever." "I know," I say again, quieter. We sit together in the dark until the amber is gone, and he asks me something. Small, practical, about my preferred recording setup, the technical side of my voice work. And we talk about that for a while, and it is the most ordinary conversation I have had inside this house. And it is, improbably, the one that makes me feel the most danger. Not physical danger, the other kind. The night of the ceremony arrives, in formal black. The West Side Pier development is exactly what it sounds like. A legitimate real estate gala masquerading as a waterfront revitalization celebration, attended by people who have long since stopped distinguishing between the money they earned and the money they took. There is a string quartet. There is an open bar. There are views of the Hudson that would be romantic under different circumstances. I wear the deep blue Antonia selects for me, deliberately not the Belladonna crimson, which would mark me too obviously. Simple, elegant. A musician at a society event, unremarkable, easy to overlook. Dante and I arrive together, and I am immediately aware of what it means, or what the room decides it means. Eyes shift. Calculations happen at speed. The woman on Belladonna's arm at a public event, at this event, is a statement being made in a language I am only just learning to read. Comfortable? He asks quietly, as we move through the first clutch of guests. Ask me in 2 hours. He doesn't smile, but his jaw relaxes slightly, which I'm beginning to understand is the equivalent. The first hour is navigation. Dante works the room with the specific efficiency of a man who has done this for years. Each exchange measured, meaningful, never casual, but never cold. He introduces me simply as Serafina Ravello, no further context. Most of the men who hear that name file it away in the careful way of people who recognize it and are waiting to understand how to use the information. 1 or 2 of them, the older ones, the ones with Sicily in their eyes, recognize it differently. Their glances at Dante carry a weight. He puts his hand at the small of my back when we move from group to group, not possessively, protectively. The distinction matters. Carmine Calderoni arrives at 9:30. I know him on sight from the briefing photos. Heavy-set, silver-haired, a face that has learned to arrange itself into warmth. He moves through the room as though he is relaxed, and I watch his hands and his associates' positions and the specific way the room's atmosphere changes when he enters it, and I understand immediately that he came here for exactly the reason Dante expected. Calderoni makes his way toward us with the inevitability of a verdict. Dante, he extends a hand. His eyes find me immediately. Carmine. The handshake is brief. Dante does not move, does not shift, does not grant a centimeter. I see the Ravello matter has resolved itself. Calderone's smile is the warm one. I'm glad. These family entanglements, messy business. The matter is resolved, Dante agrees. Completely. A beat. Something moves through Calderone's expression that is not quite what he wants it to be. Of course. He turns to me. Miss Ravello, I understand you have quite a gift. I'm told the same about you, I say pleasantly. Acquiring things. Dante makes a very small sound beside me. Calderone's smile holds for 2 more seconds, then he moves on. That was unnecessary, Dante says quietly. It was accurate. Accurate and necessary are not the same thing. I know, I did it anyway. Another almost smile. Stay close, he says. I mean it. The next 40 minutes are uneventful in the particular way of rooms that are about to stop being uneventful. I track Calderone's associates. 3 of them have moved to positions near the exits. A 4th is talking quietly into his phone near the bar. Enzo, across the room, catches my eye and tilts his head slightly. He has noticed too. I move closer to Dante. He registers it without comment. When it happens fast. A man I don't recognize pushes through from the service entrance at the side of the room. Not Calderone's men. That is the first thing I note, because I have memorized their faces, and this face isn't one of them. He is moving with the specific urgency of someone who has been paid for a single action and is executing it before his nerve breaks. He is moving toward Dante. I do not think. I step forward and to the left, and the sheer physical interruption of my movement breaks the man's line, throws his attention fractionally, and that fraction is all Enzo needs. The whole thing takes perhaps 4 seconds. There is no gunshot. The man is down. The room does not fully understand what happened, which is by design, and the string quartet keeps playing, which is surreal, and Dante's hand closes around my arm. Are you hurt? Quiet. Urgent. No. He looks at me for a long moment. Something in his expression has changed. The controlled surface of it has cracked open somewhere, just for a second, showing something underneath that I have not seen on him before and that I do not have a clean word for. That was reckless, he says. It worked. Sarah. I know, I say. My voice is steady. My hands are not, quite. I know. He does not release my arm. She stepped in front of him. Was that instinct or a choice? Tell me in the comments what you think she felt in that moment. We leave the pier 40 minutes early. The car ride is quiet. Not the hostile kind, the saturated kind, the kind that contains more than silence but has not yet decided what form to take. Enzo drives. Antonia sits in the front. Dante and I are in the back, and the only acknowledgement of what happened is that his hand has not moved from where it closed around my arm, and he has not let go. I let him keep hold of it. Back at the estate, the staff disperses with the smooth efficiency of people who understand that the household's primary business is security, and that tonight required it. Antonia gives me a look as she passes, not quite readable, but not unfriendly. And then it is just Dante and I in the hallway, and the house is very quiet. "You stepped in front of a man moving toward me with a weapon," he says. It is not quite an accusation. It is not quite a question. "Yes." "Without a weapon of your own, without training, without—" "I know what I did," I say. "I also know it worked, and I know Enzo had the angle to close because I gave it to him." I hold his gaze. "Don't tell me I should have done nothing." "I'm not going to tell you that." He stops, runs a hand over his jaw. For the first time since I arrived in his house, he looks like a man standing at the edge of something and not entirely sure of his footing. "I spent 10 years making sure nothing in your orbit led back to me, making sure you were clear of all of this, and you just stepped directly into it." "I stepped into it the night I walked into that ballroom." "That was my doing. This," he stops again, "this was yours." There is something in the way he says it. Not blame, something that costs more than blame. I close the distance between us. Not all of it. There is still a foot of charged air between us, but enough that I have to look up and he has to look down, and we are close enough that the control he has been exercising all week has a texture I can feel. Dante. His name in my voice is something different than it has been before, quieter, more deliberate. He goes very still. "Why did you let me run?" "I told you. You were building. You were 19, I say. You could have rebuilt whatever I built. You could have brought me back the day I left and made it clean, and no one would have questioned it. Why didn't you?" Long silence. "Because I didn't want you the way those contracts work," he says finally. His voice is low and careful in the way of someone choosing every word. "Brought back, settled, claimed by default. I wanted—" He stops. "I wanted you to choose." "So you waited 10 years. "I waited until there was a real reason to act. And then I acted in the way that left the choice as yours." He holds my gaze. "That was always the plan, Sarah. Not possession, not obligation. A choice." The word again. He keeps returning to it. I think about the exit that has been available since the night I arrived, the car that is always waiting, the conditions I set that he accepted without negotiating, the surgery paid for before I walked through the door. He built the door. He left it open. He waited. "I'm angry at you," I say. "I know. For the deception, for the ceremony, for the dress." The dress was Antonia. "For all of it. And I'm not— that doesn't go away because I understand why. I'm not asking it to." I look at this man who arranged my return and funded my mother's surgery and spent 10 years not taking what a piece of paper said he could have, and I am very clearly aware that I am standing in a mansion surrounded by armed men, and that all of this is deeply, fundamentally complicated. And I am also very clearly aware that the foot of charged air between us is doing something to my breathing. I have more things to be angry about, I say. I know, he says again. His voice is lower. We're going to have that conversation. Yes, but not tonight, I say, and I close the remaining distance. What follows is not dramatic. No crashing thunder, no grand declaration. Just two people in a quiet hallway, the weight of 10 years and everything complicated about them, and the first honest thing that has happened between us that neither of us orchestrated. He holds me like something he intended to be careful with. I hold him like someone who made a choice.
The Calderon response comes 3 days later. Not the way we expected. Not a direct move, not a confrontation. Something smarter. A story planted in 2 newspapers suggesting that Dante Belladonna has harbored a fugitive from a legitimate family contract, that the Ravello blood oath was violated, that the Belladonna family is unstable under its new leadership. Political pressure, legal exposure, carefully assembled, a scalpel rather than a blade. It is, I think, more sophisticated than the assassination attempt, and considerably more dangerous. They're going to call a summit, Antonia says at the dining table, where we have all assembled with the focused energy of a war council that has not quite admitted that's what it is. All 5 families. They'll ask Dante to answer the contract question publicly, in front of everyone. Which means he either denies the blood oath, Enzo starts, which signals weakness, an heir who breaks a sworn contract. Or he affirms it, which means I'm a claim again, I say. The table goes quiet. Or Dante publicly voids it, which in front of the families looks like the instability they're already alleging. I look at each of them. They've built a trap with no clean exit. Anything he does looks like one of the 2 things they want it to look like. Dante is watching me. Unless, I say slowly, the voice in the room isn't his. The idea arrives fully formed, the way musical solutions sometimes do, not built piece by piece, but heard, whole, in a single moment of clarity. The summit, I say. When? 5 days. And I'll be there? Dante sets down his glass. Sarah, I was part of the blood oath. I am the subject of the contract. Every family in that room will know that. If I stand up and void it myself, in my own name, on my own authority, as a Ravello, it is not Dante breaking his word. It is the other party to the contract exercising her own. I look at him. They can't call that instability. They can't call it a violation. It's the contractual right of the person the oath concerns. A silence. It works, Antonia says quietly. Legally and in terms of the family's code. She's right. It puts her in the room, Enzo says, with Calderone present. It puts her in the room as a principal, Antonia says, with standing. That's different. Dante is still looking at me. That expression again, the one that cracks something in the controlled surface of him. You understand what you're doing, he says, not a question. I understand that 10 years ago I ran from a room because I was 16 and alone, and no one had told me I had a voice in this. I hold his gaze. I'm not 16, and I have a voice. He is quiet for a long time. You don't have to do this for me, he says. I'm not doing it for you. A pause. I'm doing it for me. There's a difference. Another long silence. Then he nods. The summit takes place in a private room at the top of a hotel that officially does not accept these kinds of reservations. 5 families, lawyers who have signed NDAs in blood, metaphorically if not literally. Men who have not been in a room together for 8 years, here because the Calderone complaint is significant enough to require it. Carmine Calderone sits across the table with a smile that believes it is won before the proceedings begin. The family heads speak. The contract is produced,
Original copy, red ink, 20 years old. Calderone's lawyer makes his argument. The Belladonna heir violated the terms by harboring a fugitive from the oath. Then I stand up. The room recalibrates. I can feel it, the shift in attention, in energy, in the specific quality of silence that a room of powerful men produces when they are surprised. My name is Serafina Ravello, I say. I am the named party in the contract you're discussing. As the primary subject of this oath, I am exercising the contractual right of consent that was included in the original terms at the Belladonna family's insistence. I look directly at Carmine Calderone. Article 7, subsection 3. No party contracted in marriage without their present and verbal consent may be held to the agreement after the age of majority if they invoke this clause formally in front of witnesses. I pause. I am invoking it, now, in front of these witnesses. Silence. There is no violation, I continue. The contract is void on its original terms. The Belladonna family honored it to the letter by allowing the clause to exist and be invoked. Any claim the Calderone family has to this matter as an outside party is therefore, I let the pause do its work. Nothing. One of the older dons, Sicilian, white-haired, the kind of authority that doesn't need volume, makes a sound that is not quite a laugh but is adjacent to respect. Calderone's face has gone very still. His lawyer leans over and whispers something. Calderone's jaw tightens. He looks at Dante with the expression of a man who has just understood that he aimed at the wrong target. The clause was in the original document, Dante says pleasantly. You have a copy. I suggest you read it. The summit adjourns 40 minutes later, with no formal action taken. Outside in the corridor, Antonia hands me a water bottle with the expression of someone watching a high-wire act conclude without incident. Article 7, subsection 3, she says. Where did you find that? I asked for the contract the morning after I arrived. I read it that afternoon. I open the water. I was looking for exits. She looks at me for a moment. Then she smiles, a real one. Not the weaponized version. I like you, she says. In the elevator, I am alone with Dante for 30 seconds. He looks at me. You read the contract. Immediately. And you waited until now to use what you found. I waited until it was useful, I say. He is quiet for a moment. Then, you came prepared to fight your own battle. I came prepared to fight my battle, I say. I'm not opposed to fighting it in your direction. The elevator opens. Calderone is neutralized within the week, not violently, which I appreciate. Antonia, it turns out, has had a file on him for 2 years. Financial irregularities, 2 senators on his payroll, and a Port Authority official who is prepared to testify. It is delivered to the appropriate federal desks quietly, through channels that cannot be traced back to anyone at this table. Antonia puts the file on the table with the satisfied air of a person who has been waiting a long time to deploy a very good hand. He'll be busy for years, she says. Good, I say. 2 weeks after the summit, I am sitting at the piano in the library, not performing, just playing because I want to, when Dante comes in. He sits in the armchair across from me without asking, the way he has started doing, the easy presence of someone who has stopped asking permission for rooms and started asking permission for the things that matter. I play to the end of the phrase, let the last note die. I'm not going to pretend the complications don't exist, I say. I'm still looking at the keys. I know. There are things I'm still angry about. I know. And there are things I want that this world makes complicated. Tell me what they are, he says. All of them. I look up at him. This man who waited and arranged and stepped back and stepped forward and got it wrong in ways that were genuine and got it right in ways that cost him something. I want the recording contract I never got to pursue. I want to perform under my own name. I want a life that is mine, even if parts of it overlap with yours. I pause. And I want honesty, always, even when it's inconvenient, especially then. Yes, he says, simply. To all of it? To all of it. I play the opening bars of the same Sicilian ballad I was singing when he turned at the altar and found me across 40 feet of candlelit air. The melody that started all of this. He recognizes it, I see it in his face, and he does not look away. I sing, not for a room full of dangerous men, not for the performance, not because someone put $10,000 in an envelope. For myself and for this room, and for the man in the armchair who spent 10 years keeping a door open and waited, with a patience I am still not sure I deserve, for me to decide to walk back through it. My voice fills the library. No microphone, no amplification, just the sound itself, going everywhere it wants to go. Outside, the Hudson is doing what it always does, moving, dark and indifferent and beautiful. And the city is doing what it always does. And the world is exactly what it is. But in this room, right now, it is mine. Serafina Ravello came to sing at a Mafia wedding. She stayed to claim her own story. And the man at the altar, the one who had been waiting at the end of that rose-scattered aisle, finally had something he would never have taken by force, because it was always, from the very beginning, the only thing worth having. Her choice. Freely given.
And that's where we leave them. Sarah at the piano, Dante in the armchair. A story that started with a trap and ended with a choice. Because the most dangerous thing in this world has never been a man with power. It's been the moment you realize your own voice is the one thing no one can take from you. If this story stayed with you, if Sarah's voice is still in your head, subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Drop a comment. Was this the ending you hoped for, or did it surprise you? The darkness continues. Don't let it find you without a notification turned on.